So here's where freeze began for real. I want to welcome people to the course, and I want to welcome people of the first series of lectures with on the brain on neuroscience. And I want to begin this series of lectures and the course itself with a story about a man named Phineas Gage and an event they happened to Gage in summer of 1900 in Greenwich, Vermont. So Gage was a blessed foreman working in rival contest politics, and his job at the time was to clear away rock so the ground lay down tracks. Wasn't he won't burn and hole in the rocks. And to solve his routine during those days. Inside the hole, he passed blasting power and fires in. Then he would cover the path with dirt and sand and take a tumbling iron which he carried with him. A big piece of steel looked like a javelin and using in a tap down the center to rise. So that later they could sell the walls and cause the explosions. Well, one day something didn't work. Nobody exists to way maybe he joins for two parts in the sand on the dirt. The tapping iron shot away from his hand and wound into his face, in interest to the first sight of Gage's jaw. Moving our power directors is passed behind the radio that left side of brain and I went to rope top of his skull and led several with away the colton. Now, miraculous Gage was killed on the spot. He lost conscience for a little bit, but then he staged to his feet. And his song-rich Gage was very like. So he underwent a series of operations. He had infection. He got sick. At times his life was at risk. But months later he was in Center Ridge, pretty much recovered. He able to see, he wasn't there, he wasn't pious, he didn't lose the ability to speak or understand languages, he didn't lose his intellectual capacities in any same way. But in another sense, Gage was very unlucky. Someone who knows Gage describes the transformation like this. Before the acting Gage was quite the most efficient and separate man. A man temperature habits considerable energy and opportunity at shapes business name. After the actions, Gage was no Gage. He was fighting everything and hours and time in the gross primary, manifest by its little difference for in the battle. And the ultimates end up in the habits in a terrible course, holding a temperature around and telling people about this terrible stuff about how it went out his head and went out his brain and changed his life. So why I'm telling you this history? Well, as I said, I want to begin the course by talking about the brain. And the story of Prince Gage illustrates how something which behaves about reason to believe with that the brain in the house of mental life. And so damage to the brain and the idea is now summarized by the Nobel Prize-winning biology Francis Crick. He calls in the astonishing happiness. As he finds the notion happiness is that you, your jobs and your stars, your memories and your ambitions, your sense of present ideals and free will are in fact more than the behaviors of its assembly of neuroscience and the associated molecules. Now this assembly of neuroscience of course is the brain and part of the special codes but we are going to talk about the brain here. And the idea then, some people like to put in the mind to the brain, or that this mind is both the brain. That of the mental life emerges from the brain. The official term for this is militarism, that were military banks. Everybody accepts that all only less and our heads and clothes are made of the sum of stuff as rubbish and automobiles and cups. But the idea is so mental life that makes all special, almost intangible feeling and touch around the mental piece. And this idea that makes possible the despite of neuroscience and much of psychology.